So welcome to the latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over a GCSE Maths practice paper on the foundation tier, which is titled Set 4 Paper 3, which is a calculator paper. Now before we get started working through the paper, a little reminder that a link to the paper is available for you to download by clicking on the link in the description. I'll also include a question breakdown so you can see which topic is related to each of the questions on this paper. And also, if you're struggling with any of the questions or any of the topics covered in this paper, then feel free to check out the 162 Maths contents page, which not only has in detailed lessons on all the topics, but also includes some topic tests, which are an excellent revision resource, along with audits and also other exam paper walkthroughs. So let's get straight into question 1. So question 1 says, what is the mode of these numbers? Now the mode is basically the number that appears the most. So which of these numbers appear the most? It's going to be 6, so we just need to circle our first option. Moving on to question 2, it says, what is the value of the 3 in the answer to 13.78 divided by 100? Well, if we first type this into our calculator, then we should get an answer of 0.1378. And what the question is asking is, what is the value of 3? Well, 3 in terms of place value is 3 hundredths. And if I type that into my calculator, all that I recognise that the correct answer is the last one. Moving on to question 3, it says, what is the largest 2-digit prime number? Circle your answer. Now, if you're not sure or not confident with your primes and you've got a calculator, because remember this is a calculator paper, then all you need to do is basically to check if it's prime, type in the number, press equals, then press shift and fact, and if it changes, it means it's not a prime number. So here we can see 93 is not a prime number. So if we try 95, press equals, shift and fact, that changes, so that's not prime. Try 97, shift and fact, press equals, then press shift and fact, that doesn't change, so that is a prime. And 99 I know is not a prime number, so the correct answer is going to be 97. Moving on to question 4, it says, which ratio is not equivalent to the ratio of 3 to 4? Well, with this one, if we multiply both numbers by 4 to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to end up with 3 to 4. If I multiply both sides in this one by 3, I'm going to get 3 to 4. If I multiply this one by, let's say, 3, so this is going to be 3, and this would be 3.9, so far that's a good candidate. And here if I simplify and divide both the numbers by 2, I get 3 to 4. So the correct answer I need to circle is 1 to 1.3. Moving on to question 5, it says that a stall sells drinks and sandwiches, and it says a family buys 10 items altogether. Then they buy more drinks than sandwiches, or they buy more drinks than sandwiches rather, and they save 60 pence using the offer. How much do they pay altogether? Well, first things first, if we add up these two amounts, it comes up to a total of £3.40. Now, as you can see, in terms of using the offer, we save, and it's going to be 15 pence. So what we want to see is how many 15 pences do they save? Well, if I then do 60 divided by 15, that gives me 4. So what they've taken advantage of, if they've taken advantage of 4 offers, and that is 8 items. Now, using the offer, we get equal number of drinks as we do sandwiches. Now, in the statement, it says that they buy more drinks than sandwiches. So that means that we've got 4 offers. And in order for there to be more drinks, we need to order 2 more drinks. So this is how much they've spent. So if we calculate that, so 4 offers is going to be 4 lots of £3.25. And we've got 2 drinks priced at £1.10. Then all I then need to do is total them up. So here 4 offers is going to come up to a total of £13, and 2 drinks is going to be £2.20. So all that's left for me to then do is add those two amounts together, and I get an answer of £15.20. Moving on to question 6, it says the sum of 2 numbers is 35. The second number is 4 times the first number. Work out the 2 numbers. So here if I just have 2 blanks, we know that when we add them together, we get 35. Now, if we don't know the numbers, so I'm just going to call the first number x, So this is my first number. And it says that the second number is 4 times the first number. Well, if the first number is x, then the second number is going to be 4x. So what I've got is I've got x plus 4x equals 35. So then if I collect the like terms, I end up with 5x equals 35. So therefore x is going to equal, if I take the 5 over by dividing, I end up with x equals 7. Now the question says, what are the two numbers? Well, the first number is x, which is just 7, and the second number is 4 times that, which is 7 times 4, which is 28. So the two numbers you want to write are 7 and 28 in any particular order. Moving on to question 7a, it says which of A, B, C, D is an enlargement to x. So if I just zoom out, and what we're looking for is a perfect enlargement of x, and here the one that you want to circle is going to be D. Moving on to question 7b, it says on the grid draw a shape that is a reflection of y. Now for this, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you are drawing, and again making sure you've got a bit of space. So all we're doing is reflecting. Now you can reflect this shape anywhere, but it needs to be 2 across and 3 down. And then what you also then need to do is mark where that reflection line could be. Now you could draw your shape, your image anywhere on there, but you want to make sure that it is a reflection and that you do include your mirror line. Moving on to question 8, let's just zoom in so we can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. It says that a gas company estimates the amount a household will spend on gas next year, and the estimate is 1,450 excluding VAT, and VAT of 5% is added. The household wants to pay in 12 equal monthly instalments. Is £130 per month enough to pay for the gas? So what we need to do first is work out the VAT added, which is 5% of 1450. Now in order to work out the percentage, again you could work out 10% then divide by 2, or you could use decimal multipliers. So here I'm going to use a decimal multiplier, and I'm just going to type that into my calculator, and I get an answer of £72.50. So that means that the total bill is going to be 1,450 plus the VAT amount, which is £72.50, which comes up to a grand total of £1,522.50. Now for the monthly instalments, what we need to do is divide that number by 12, in which I get an answer of £126.87.5, which, let's just say for argument's sake, we round up because we want to pay the bill. Now the question's asking, and again it's really important that you read the question carefully, because this is the question: is £130 per month enough to pay for the gas? Well, the amount that the company is going to be wanting is 126, so the answer therefore is going to be yes. If you wanted to, you could say that £130 is greater than 126.88. But again, the answer of yes and that working out would suffice. Moving on to question 9a, it says work out the output of y when x is 4. So here we're starting with 4, we're multiplying by 6, we take away 5, and we get the value of y. Now if you are going to use a calculator, make sure you always press equals before doing the next instruction. So here we end up with 4 times 6, which is 24, take away 5, which gives me an answer of 19. It then says for 9b, complete the number machine so that y equals 2 lots of x plus 7. Well, starting with x, the first thing we do is add 7, and then we multiply the answer by 2. Then for 9c, it says here is a different number machine, x divided by 2 plus 3 and equals y. Which equation is correct for this function machine? And the one you want to circle is the first one, because the first thing you want to do is divide by 2, and then to the answer you then want to add 3, so the answer is going to be the first option. Moving on to question 10, it says the diagram shows the results of a survey of 1,000 British motorists, and it says how can you tell that the percentages are not the exact figures? Well, one thing that you should spot is if we add up the percentages, that the total percentages add up to 99%. So there's a 1% missing somewhere. It says using the percentages given, how many motorists thought driverless cars were a bad idea? So for this, if we go back to a bad idea, that's 34%. So what we're trying to work out is 34% of 1,000. So again, either you do this manually, you can do 34 over 100 multiplied by 1,000, or you could do 0.34 multiplied by 1,000, but you should end up with an answer of 340. The next question then says, assume that percentages are given to the nearest 1%, work out the largest possible number of motorists who thought driverless cars were a good idea. Well, if we go back, the percentages that thought it was a good idea was 20%. So if it's to the nearest 1%, if we divide 1% by 2, then the bounds are going to be 20 plus or minus 0.5. So it's going to be 19.5% to, let's go for, let's call it C, and 20.5%. Now for this, what we want to do then is, now again, although it's 20.5%, that is the upper bound, but the percentage needs to be less than that number. So if we work out 20.5% of 1,000, in which I'm going to get 0.205 multiplied by 1,000, I get an answer of 205. So looking at the boundaries, it's going to be between 195 and 205. Now, because it can't equal, it's got to be a number less than 205. That means that the biggest number it can be is going to be 204. 204. Then moving on to question 11, it says the table shows the savings for 30 students in 1 week. How many students saved more than £5? Well, more than £5 is, looking at the inequalities, is going to be these 3 columns here. So if I add 14 plus 9 plus 5, I get an answer of 28. It then says how many students did not save anything. Well, looking at the first column and using the inequalities, that everyone surveyed was saving some money. There was no one, because the inequality here can't equal 0, that means everything was above 0. So how many students did not save anything? The answer is going to be 0. Moving on to question 12, it says solve 20x equals 4, circle your answer. Well, looking at 20x, we want to get x by itself, so we need to get rid of the 20. So we're doing 4 divided by 20, so x equals 4 over 20. You can either type it into your calculator or simplify it, but we get 1/5, which is the first option. Moving on to question 13, it says n is an odd number. It says tick any of the statements that is true. Now with these questions, what you want to do is basically pick an odd number for n. So here, if I just go for n equals 3, so substituting n equals 3, I'm going to get 3 squared plus 1, which is 10, so that's not true. 3 lots of 3 plus 1 is 3 times 4, which is 12, so that's not true. 3 plus 1 squared is equal to, I don't have to write a plus there, is equal to 4 squared, which is 16, so that's not true. 3 squared plus 2 is 9 plus 2, which is 11. That is odd, so we tick that one. 3 lots of 3 plus 2 is 3 times 5, which is 15. That is odd. And 3 plus 2 squared is, I don't know why I keep writing plus, is equal to 5 squared, which is 25, and that is odd. So the boxes we need to tick are the bottom 3. And moving on to question 14, it says Jack draws a pie chart to represent his time watching the news in January. Altogether, he watches 18 hours of news. And question 14a says, how many hours did he spend watching ITV? So ITV is basically a quarter, and the total is 18. So for this, what we need to do is just simply work out a quarter of 18. Of means time, so it's just a quarter times 18. Again, we can either type that into our calculator or work it out manually, but we should get an answer of 4.5. It then says write down one criticism of his pie chart. And again, looking at his pie chart, obviously we can see that one sector has not been labelled. So one sector has not been labelled. And that's probably the most common one that he's got wrong. Moving on to question 14c, it says in February he also watches 18 hours of news. He watches 10 hours on BBC. Jack says that there is more than in January because the pie chart shows I watched less than 9 hours of BBC News. Comment on his statement. Now for this, it is a true statement, so it's true, as 9 hours is half the pie chart, and the BBC is less than half. So something along those lines will be fine for the mark. Then says in February he watches 2 hours of news on Sky. Jack says if I draw a pie chart for February, the angle for Sky News will not be a whole number of degrees. This is because 2 over 18 is not a terminating decimal. Is this statement correct? And we need to tick our box here. So for this, what we want to do is we want to work out 2/18 of 360. So if I do, because obviously it's 360 degrees in an angle. So this here is the proportion, which is 2/18, and the number of angles. So to work out the angle, we do 2/18 times 360. And if I type that into my calculator, I actually get an answer of 40. So is that a reoccurring decimal? No, it's not. So it's not correct. You could also say something along the lines of that 18 is a factor of 360. So again, as long as you tick the right box with a valid reason for it, then that should be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 15, it says that this triangle is the cross-section of a triangular prism of a with length 10 centimeters. Ali writes the volume of 9 times 5 times 10. The volume is 450. Check his working and write down the correct answer. Well, for this, if I just turn this into a triangular prism, it says that the length is 10. Now, the volume of a triangular prism is the cross-sectional area, which is the triangle, multiplied by the length. Now, to work out the volume of a triangle, that's base times height divided by 2, multiplied by L. So substituting those numbers, this is my H, this is my B, this is my L. I get 9 times 5 divided by 2 multiplied by 10. So if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 225. And again, it's really important that you include the units, which is centimeter cubes, especially as there's no units mentioned at all. So if you just wrote 225, you would lose a mark. Moving on to question 16, it says that ACE and BCD are straight lines. CD is equal to CE, and it's asking us to work out the size of angle X. Well, the first thing we want to work out is this angle here. Now we can work that out because angles in a triangle add up to 180, so that's going to be 180 minus 85 minus 32, which gives us an answer of 63 degrees. Now this angle here is also going to be 63 degrees because it is an opposite angle. Then, as we can see that we've got a isosceles triangle, so if this angle here is X, this angle here is going to be X. So what we know is that 2X plus 63 equals 180. So we know that 2X is going to equal 180, take away 63, which if I type that into my calculator just to make sure, gives me an answer of 117. So X is going to equal 117 divided by 2, which gives me an answer of 58.5 degrees. Moving on to question 17, it says on a map the distance between two towns is 6 centimetres. The actual distance is 1.2 kilometres. Work out the scale of the map as a ratio in its simplest form. So what we know is that 6 centimetres equals 1.2 kilometres. Now what you want to do is when you get our final answers, you want to make sure the units are the same. So for this, I'm going to choose that we're going to get them both into centimetres. So here I've got 6 centimetres. I'm not going to touch anything on the left, but I'm going to start converting this. Now I know 1.2 kilometres is 1,200 metres. And then from this, I can then convert that to centimetres by multiplying by 100. And I get 1,200,000 centimetres. Now this is the ratio that I now need to simplify. So if I divide both these numbers by 6, and again, just use it on a calculator, I should end up with an answer of 1 centimetre equals 20,000, just checking the number of zeros. So the ratio then is going to be 1 to 20,000. Moving on to question 18, it says here is a distance time graph, and it says match each statement to one section of the journey. So let's just go back, and it's obviously clearly reset, so let's just go back to the question and let's just try and zoom that in. There we go. So we can see it says the average speed. Now remember that the speed is equal to distance over time. So what we're looking for, and the speed is the gradient. So what we're looking for is the average speed, or the gradient, is 25, in which, where is it 25? It's going to be B to C. And again, all you then need to do is just simply work out the gradient of each line. And remember that the gradient is the distance up divided by the distance across. It then says which has got a gradient of 10. So where is the triangle? Again, if you're not sure, we just draw our triangles. Let's do them in different colours. You can see we've got 4 triangles. So if I use this formula to work out the gradient, I'll get the answer. So the average speed is 10, is going to be D to E. Then where is it stationary? So where is it horizontal? And that's going to be between C and D. And which is the fastest part of the journey? And that's basically the steepest line. And that's going to be again B to C. Then says how far is the total journey? Now for this, what we then need to do is work out the distance of each of the 5 steps. If I just slowly zoom in. So here from A to B, it's 50. So we just write A to B, they've travelled 50. B to C, it's 25. Then C to D is flat, so we've travelled none. And then D to E is equal to 20, and E to F is 45. So if I add up each of those 4 amounts, or 5 amounts, depending on how you want to see it. So here I've got 50 plus 25 plus 20 plus 45 gives me a total mileage of 140. Moving on to question 19, it says the direct route between 2 airports A and B is 450 kilometres. An aircraft leaves A at 9:30 and arrives at B at 1100. Work out the average speed of the aircraft. Assume that the aircraft travelled the direct route. So here speed is equal to distance divided by time. So the distance travelled is 450 kilometres, and for the time we want to work this out in hours. So it's 1 hour 30 minutes, but we want to convert that into hours only. So it's 1 and 30 over 60, which is 1.5 hours. So we want to divide that by 1.5. So if I then enter this on the calculator, I'm going to get an answer of 300 kilometers per hour. Remember, it is an aircraft, so the speed is going to be a lot faster. It then says, in fact, that the aircraft did not travel direct route. How does this affect your average speed? Well, if it's going direct route, but it takes a little bit longer and it gets there at the same time, it means that it's definitely going to travel faster. So you could say it travels further. So must travel faster. And there we go. Because obviously then if you look at the formula, that if we're increasing the distance, it means we're going to get a faster. In other words, increasing the denominator means we're going to get a bigger answer. Moving on to question 20, it says Sam writes the square root of 13 squared minus 5 squared is equal to 13 minus 5 equals 8. What is wrong with his method? Now, where he's made made his error is that he has square rooted before he has squared. So what he needs to do is he needs to work out 13 squared minus 5 squared first and then square root. Now, the key thing where a lot of people will forget is it also asks the question to give the correct answer. So what we then need to do is on the calculator is enter the square root of 13 squared minus 5 squared. So if I get the calculator back again, press equals, press the square root, and then just using the functions on the calculator, oh, I've put 5 there, so 2 minus 5 squared, press equals, and I get the correct answer of 12. For 20b, it says either writes 4 squared times 4 squared times 4 squared equals 2 to the power of 2 times 2 times 2. What is wrong with their method? Give the correct answer. Well, here, using the rules of indices, when we're multiplying, we add the powers. So either should have added the powers, not multiplied them. So what it should be is 4, 2 plus 2 plus 2, which is 4 to the power of 6. So you can either write your answers 4 to the power of 6, or you can actually work that out, which if I type into my calculator, gives me an answer of 4096. By posting would have left it as 4 to the power of 6, as that's how she's left her answer. Moving on to question 21a, it says write these numbers in ascending order. So what we want to do is we want to convert these standard form numbers into ordinary form. So here we've got 9, and then we're moving the power, the decimal point 2 places, so it's going to be 982, and this one moving it 3 places, which turns it into 9810. So in terms of which one's smallest, now with these questions I would always write the numbers in its original form. So I'm going to write 9.82 times 10 to the 2. Then the second smallest is 9.81 times 10 to the 3, and then the largest number is 9813. It then says John is multiplying two numbers given in standard form. He says, so for any of the numbers, and then we've got that blah blah blah, it says, is he correct in thinking, right, so if I multiply the two base numbers, or the A numbers, together and then add the powers, so adding the powers is fine, but the problem with this method, if you have practiced using this in your revision, is that A times C it's not going to be correct, because A times C can be bigger than 10. And you need to remember that when we're using standard form, that A needs to be a number between 1 and 10. And so A times C, because there's no restriction, could be bigger than 10. So if that's going to be bigger than 10, then we need to manipulate the power. So unfortunately, John is wrong. Moving on to question 22a, it says factorise, and we've got x squared minus 9x plus 20. So for this, what we're looking for are two numbers that multiply together to equal 20 and added together equal negative 9. Now the two numbers you need to be thinking of are minus 4 and minus 5. So then putting them in brackets, we get that as our answer, in which you can write the brackets in any order, but the numbers you need to have are minus 4 and minus 5 inside. Moving on to 22b, it says solve, and we want to solve this. So the first thing you want to check is that, is it equal to 0? Yes, it is. So we don't need to do any manipulation. So next what we want to do is factorize this. Now this is the answer in part A. So it's x minus 4, x minus 5 equals 0. So either x minus 4 equals 0, in which x must equal 4, or x minus 5 equals 0, in which x equals positive 5. So here the two answers are 4 or 5. Moving on to question 23, it says solve the simultaneous equations. Now when we're solving simultaneous equations, we want to see, first of all, see are any of the letters got the same quantity, which here we can see the x's are the same. The next thing we need to decide, are they the same sign, in which they're both positive? So yes, they are. So what we need to do is take away the two equations. So here 3x take away 3x is nothing. 2 minus 1 is 3y, and 10 take away 13 is minus 3. So therefore, if we take the 3 over to the other side, we end up with a y value of minus 1. So if I take one of the statements, so let's use 3x plus 2y equals 10. We know y is minus 1, so we've got 3x plus 2 lots of minus 1 equals 10. So 3x minus 2 equals 10. Take the 2 over, so we end up with 3x equals 12. Take the 3 over, and which end up with x equals 4. So my two values are x equals 4 and y equals minus 1. Moving on to question 24, it says the diagram shows a cuboid and its diagonal. The formula to work out the length of the diagonal in centimetres is that the length of the diagonal is the square root of a squared plus b squared plus c squared. Work out the length of the diagonal when a equals 8, b equals 3 and c equals 2. So all we need to do is substitute these values into the formula. So if I substitute those into the formula, what I end up with is the square root of 8 squared plus 3 squared plus 2 squared. So again, if I get the calculator and enter that exactly how it's seen, so square root, and I've got 8 squared plus 3 squared plus 2 squared, press equals, gives me root 77, press SD, and the question is asking to give our answer to two significant figures. Now one thing I would always recommend that you do is to write down the number on your calculator before doing your rounding. So here we end up with 8.774964,387, because if my rounding is wrong, at least I'm going to get a mark for this answer here. So we then need to round to 2 sig fig, and that's going to be 8.8, and that is in centimetres. Moving on to 24b, it says work out the length of the diagonal in terms of a. Now remember that the formula was a squared plus b squared plus c squared all square rooted. So here what we're substituting is a equals a, b equals 2a and c equals 2a. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in brackets. So I've got a squared plus 2a squared plus 2a squared. Now if I simplify these, in which I need to square all the things inside the brackets, I end up with a squared plus 2 squared is 4, a squared is a squared, and the same for the next one. That's all square rooted. So collecting the like terms, I end up with the square root of 9a squared. Now that is the same as root 9 times root a squared. Root 9 is 3. The square root of a squared, the root and the square cancel out, so I'm just left with a. So the answer then is 3a. Then moving on to our last answer, it says the diagram shows two circular arcs with centre O. And it says that how much longer is the big arc from the smaller arc. Now the arc length, the formula is theta divided by 360 multiplied by 2 pi r. So here, looking at the big arc, theta is 120 and the radius is all of this length here, which is 5 centimeters. Now for the small arc, which is, let's just color code these. So the big arc is this, the small arc is this. So for the small arc, theta is the same angle, which is 120, but r is just this distance here, which is 4. So to work out the distance of the big arc, I just substitute those numbers into the formula, so it's 120 divided by 360 multiplied by 2 times pi times 5. And if I enter all of that in on the calculator, let's just do that now. I'll show you how to do it. So we've got 120 over 360 multiplied by 2 times pi multiplied by 5, press equals, and I end up with 10.47. Now you could leave it in terms of pi, so let's just write 10 over 3 pi. Or you could write it as a decimal, which was 10.47197 551. Now the key thing to remember here is that the question does want you to give your answer to one decimal place, so it's important that we are using accurate values. So here the small arc, and again substituting numbers, 120 times 2 times pi, this time multiplied by 4. So again entering that on the calculator, I should have just edited the line that was already there, times 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by 4, and I get an answer of 8 over 3 pi. But if I press the SD button, I end up with 8.37758,041. Now the question is asking for the difference, so what I need to do is I need to subtract those two numbers, so this number from this number. So either you can do 10 over 3 pi minus 8 over 3 pi, so you can enter that on your calculator, or you can type in, now again we'll try and use the exact values, 0.471975551. Now you don't need to use all the numbers. If you want to play it safe and be more accurate, go for it. But I would say as long as you're using numbers more than one decimal place, you should end up with the correct answer, in which if I type that into one decimal place, I should end up with an answer of 2.1. And that concludes the end of this practice paper.